1. The source of transformation. Crisis of the existing order and new demands. Gramsci emphasizes that social transformation is not accidental. It arises from the crisis of the existing system. Classes that no longer benefit from the old relations of production begin to seek new alliances and structures, which leads to the formation of new historical blocks on the political level. Here, Gramsci moves beyond the economic reductionism of classical liberal or Marxist approaches. Transformation is not only about who owns the means of production, it depends on how political and cultural organization responds to crisis. 2. Counter-hegemony. Building disciplinary symmetry with the dominant system. Gramsci observes that bourgeois hegemony is not built solely on ideas, it is established through institutional discipline and organization. Through Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book metaphor, he outlines a hierarchical command system: mule right-pointing arrow, sergeant right-pointing arrow, officer right-pointing arrow, general right-pointing arrow, queen. Gramsci makes a radical point here. If hegemony is constructed through such strong disciplinary structures, counter-hegemony must be equally disciplined and organized. Thus, the tools of the ruling class are not merely to be criticized, they must be studied, mirrored, and inverted. Counter-hegemony must not only produce ideas but also train cadres, institutionalize itself, and generate an alternative political intellectual leadership. 3. Class fractions and the historical bloc. The necessity of new alliances. Gramsci argues against viewing the proletariat as a monolithic bloc. He insists on forming alliances with other class fractions, especially with the peasantry in southern Italy. This marks a departure from classical Marxism's assumption of a unified working class because a southern peasant does not share the same experience as an industrial worker. But they do share a common enemy: bourgeois hegemony. Therefore, a class that seeks to establish hegemony must not only hold economic power, it must demonstrate cultural and ideological leadership. A historical bloc is formed when economic, cultural, and political alliances among class fractions synchronize to establish a unified front. Hegemony is not the product of a single class. It is the outcome of coalition building, cultural leadership, and legitimation. 4. Discipline and the reconstruction of the state. Gramsci argues that political victory by the working class is not the endpoint, but rather the beginning. To sustain power, the working class must reproduce the state, by constructing hegemonic legitimacy through civil society. At this point, Gramsci tactically appropriates the tools of the system he critiques. Discipline, institutionalization, and hegemonic practice are reversed and redirected. Civil society, once a tool of the state, now becomes the foundation of the state's legitimacy under worker-led governance. Gramsci's vision of a political order. Gramsci did not develop his concepts solely for theoretical critique. He aimed to construct a practical revolutionary strategy. His ideal political order rests on the following core principles: concept function, counter-hegemony to destabilize the dominant regime of ideas, passive revolution to analyze how the system absorbs or reacts to transformation pressures, historical bloc to unite alternative class alliances through cultural and ideological leadership, class fractions to build a diverse and organized coalition instead of a homogeneous people, disciplined organization to build an alternative form of power using the tools of the dominant order, the role of civil society to re-establish the legitimacy of governance from the social-based conclusion. Gramsci believed that hegemony wars begin in the realm of culture, but must ultimately lead to a transformation of political power. In this process, the organizational forms of the ruling class must be both critiqued and tactically imitated, in order to build a rival hegemonic order. His thought offers a strategic framework for those who seek not just to resist power, but to reconstruct it from the ground up.